Oh, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you for coming. So I was in LA last week preparing for this, and I was like, how should I start this presentation? And I was brainstorming, started procrastinating, and I ended up on YouTube killing an hour watching Michael Jordan highlights. And the algorithm knows me so well, it was just feeding me all these Chicago Bulls highlights from the 1990s. And if the algorithm were here today, it would probably do a great job knowing everything about me, telling you I'm a 46-year-old producer, songwriter, composer. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago called Northbrook, represent, and I've been based in LA for the last 21 years. For the last 15, I've worked as a studio musician, music director, composer. I've scored films and documentaries. Touring musician, I've toured all over the world with various artists. Just last week, I got back from a run of shows with my band, The Voids. We were in Europe, so it's been very cool to prepare for this presentation on the heels of releasing music and being on the road. There were literally moments on stage that I was feeling underprepared for this presentation, and I was playing in front of thousands of people, like mid-song, gathering ideas of subjects to get into for this evening. So excited to share those with you. So for those of you that aren't sports fans or don't understand the relationship between the song we just heard and the Chicago Bulls drafted Michael Jordan in the early 1980s. Now this is a music presentation, I promise, but the marketing division for the team wanted to create an introduction song that would play each night when they were announcing the starting lineup. To celebrate like this new era for the team. So they enlisted a local disc jockey and announcer to think of something. He tried the Miami Vice theme, he tried Michael Jackson's Thriller. Eventually he chose Sirius, spelled S-I-R-I-U-S, by the Alan Parsons Project. And that was if it was good enough for Michael, it was good enough for me for an introduction. So that's just what and I have some Chicago people in the audience tonight, so anyway, my next stop on my internet adventure was to figure out, the history of this piece, Sirius. I knew who wrote it. Alan Parsons is a legendary recording engineer. Worked on Dark Side of the Moon, Abbey Road, Let It Be by the Beatles, of course. And I stumbled on this really cool interview with him where he was talking about making Sirius. And he says, I was always into gadgets and technology. I was just tinkering around at home with my new computer musical instrument, the Fairlight synthesizer, back in 1982. I came up with this little riff, literally thinking of it as a cool instrumental introduction to Eye in the Sky, which was his album, not the Bulls theme song. And then a light bulb lit up for me, and I was like, okay, I think I know what I want to get into this evening with everybody. And there's two things. There's one, this idea of tinkering. I think musicians, producers, composers, if not all artists in general, are tinkerers. Like, we love nothing more than discovering an idea, developing the idea, fine-tuning it, futzing with it. We love to tinker. So that's something we're going to get into, maybe shedding some light on what happens when a musician sits down at an instrument and just starts coming up with a new idea. The other is this relationship between technology in music that I thought was really interesting. I know the theme for this weekend is what's next, and I'm sure all the different speakers have thoughts about what's to come in culture and society. I think technology has to be woven into that answer for everybody, and music is no different. He was talking about the Fairlight synthesizer, which is pictured right here. This came out in the early 1980s. This was like the coolest, most cutting edge technological innovation in synthesis and music production. To own one would have cost about $100,000. You've definitely heard it. Stevie Wonder had one, Peter Gabriel had one, Kate Bush had one. Very, very big deal. And I was thinking about this Fairlight, and I was like, well, if this is what this represented in the early 1980s, it probably was true that when the grand piano was invented, it too was like the new, cool, cutting-edge instrument of its time. So that was my next search. I had no idea. That was the early 18th century. And I was like, okay, that wasn't too far. Like, Mozart was doing his thing in Vienna, creating these incredible masterpieces decades later, using what was at the time like a brand new instrument. It would have been like Dylan playing electric at Newport Folk Festival in the 60s. So this was a big deal. Now, he would have grown up playing clavichord and harpsichord. These had been around for centuries. And just to show you what each instrument sounds like, I just want to take a quick little tour through time, really. So the first thing that jumps out to me is the dynamic range that you get on a piano. A clavichord and harpsichord you couldn't play with that kind of sensitivity. And when the piano was invented, the guy that invented it was just solving an issue of technology, really. Like, how do you create an instrument that could be more expressive? Fortepiano, which is the predecessor to today's modern piano, literally translates to loud, soft. So to be able to play with this dynamic range was a big deal. The sustain pedal is positioned incorrectly. ChatGPT screwed that up. In those days, the piano, if you wanted to like dampen a chord or a note, you would have lifted your knee as you were playing, and there were like these levers right under the keyboard that you would have pushed up. Now, the sustain pedal is really interesting because as the piano evolved, into the next generation of classical composers, it was exploited. Just like this one simple innovation changed music. And one of the big preeminent composers of the next era, the Romantic era, is Chopin. And Chopin calls the sustain pedal the soul of the piano. And the next generation after that, the Impressionists, took it to another level. Music was starting to evolve because the technology was allowing it to. The sustain pedal revolutionized music. These are a few of my favorite Impressionist pieces. So we're going to come back to this in a second, this idea of technological innovation driving musical evolution. But for now, while we're discussing these incredible composers, I thought we would time travel back to Vienna in 1801 to consider how maybe one of the greatest piano sonatas ever written came to be. So we're going to hop in the DeLorean here, and we're going to set to the year 1801, and we're going to land, very conspicuously in the center of town to terrify all of these citizens, and because we're jerks, and that's what we do. And so we take the DeLorean down these cobblestone streets to the home of Ludwig van Beethoven. And it's a beautiful afternoon. He's probably upstairs working on music. His neighbors are hanging out, enjoying the day, possibly listening to what's going on upstairs. So let's push through upstairs and see. Okay, so he's not working on music today. He is feeling a little down, Beethoven is, because this woman that he is looking at, this face belongs to a woman named Giulietta Gicardi. And I'm probably mispronouncing that, but he is in love with her. She is his student, his muse, his lover, and he wants to marry her. She wants to marry him. But her father is not letting this happen because Beethoven, he has no rank. He's very successful. His first symphony had come out the year before to great acclaim. And he's very admired by his publishers and patrons and whatnot. But he's feeling very down because her father won't let them get married, and he's thinking about her morning, noon, and night. And here's a picture that I included so we can just behold her beauty. And then he does what all artists, composers do that are experiencing emotional turmoil. They sit down at their instrument and they just begin playing. So he didn't keep a journal at all, like during this period of music, so there's no way for sure to know. I'm making some assumptions here. But for the sake of the exercise and for fun, let's just go there. So he's staying in and he just starts kind of futzing around, not with a synthesizer, that wouldn't have been around yet, but he's playing. Just with some chords. And he just comes up with an opening passage that he really likes, and he has a quill and a piece of paper next to him, and he jots, and he writes that down. And he starts to work on this. He thinks it's a beautiful piece of music, but somehow it's not right, like where the emotional map in his mind is what he wants to dedicate to Juliet. So he wants to pivot and work on something else. But before he does that, he wants to take this piece of paper and put it into a folder that he keeps next to his piano. And this is very important, even today, this idea of saving your good ideas so they don't disappear forever. Everybody that I've ever worked with, any songwriter, they have some system in place of organizing their ideas. So if they need to recall them, they can quickly access them. The lead singer of Van Halen, David Lee Roth, I listened to an interview with him recently, and he calls this banking your ideas. This is a really big deal, so I just wanted to stop here for a second to just discuss that. But let's listen to what he's got to say.
Mistake that a lot of young writers in my department, the lyrics, make. They wait for the music or the track first, and then you'll walk into a studio and hope that the hand of God will descend and grace you with amazing epiphanies. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be Moon in June. Really? When? Sometime soon. What time of day? I'm thinking noon. And literally, unless you're banking, somebody says something, any expressions, ideas, slogans, storylines, etc. You're banking your ideas. I heard somebody, a waitress named Pepper, with an unlit Pall Mall cigarette, tell me, "Oh, honey, nothing could have stopped us back then anyway." That's a title.
So the idea is when you have momentum and you're working on something and you need maybe to borrow an idea, something that you'd come up with in the past, that you can find it and access it quickly so it doesn't slow you down when you're in the groove. This is going to come up in the rest of the presentation. So anyway, back to Beethoven. He's sitting at his piano. He didn't like the major key he was playing in before, so he wants to play in something minor. And he thought maybe go to a different register on the piano, and starts tinkering again. And he just comes up with an opening phrase. He doesn't know what it is. It might be a little too sweet, not exactly right, but just that simple thing. Takes his quill, piece of paper, jots down, takes it, puts it in, he banks the idea. And then he comes back down to the lower register that he was in. He now likes the minor key. That was starting to kind of resonate with him a little bit. And he starts just kind of arpeggiating triplet on a minor key, and he's established a mood that he likes. So he just is playing, and now he's got to start making some choices. Chord progressions, moving the bass notes, slowing it down. So he found something that he really likes, and he thinks that he's on his way. Now, more choices. A melody. he finds an introduction, and he really likes it. He has now kind of gone through this first phase of the creative process where he has found something that feels right. He's like followed that emotional map to a place where his mind, body, and soul are all wrapped up in this idea. And now he's starting to conceptualize this piece. He's making structural choices, arrangement choices. Where do the chords lead, the melody? And all of these choices that are happening are coming from what I like to call the little voice in his head. We all have a little voice in your head. And so what the little voice in your head is attempting to do is help you make the right decisions and make whatever it is that you're making the absolute best possible thing that it can be. So are the aesthetics right? Is the messaging right? Is it to your taste? Is the personality right? And it can be like annoying to have these questions coming in incessantly when you're working. But it's a very important part of the inescapable part of the creative process. And what the little voice is constantly doing is just saying yes and no to a million different questions. And so once you get past through that, he makes a first draft and he's on his way. He's found this piece. He's conceptualized the idea. He's made compositional choices. He now gets to a point where it's like, what should the sound of this be? Just because it was written on piano doesn't necessarily mean that it has to stay on piano. He was an accomplished violinist. He probably would have had one of those close by, if not a cello or a viola. He can interpret this music on different instruments. And now he also realizes that there's a DeLorean outside. And he's like, well, is there anything in the future that could be fun and cool? So he gets into, not the DeLorean, some other Viennese time machine from the 18th century. And he asks where we should go. And he's like, any ideas? I say, I really like music from the 1980s. You want to go to the 1980s? Wow, 1980s, great. So we go to 1980s. I'm like, Los Angeles, California. We get to LA. And everybody knows that Beethoven's in LA. Before long, he's taking meetings with Steven Spielberg. They're hanging out, having sushi, on Rodeo. And so Steven is explaining to Ludwig, he's like, Ludwig, I'm working on this big blockbuster movie this summer, and I really need a piece of music that tells the story of this guy that's in love with this woman, but, he has no rank, and her father isn't letting them get married, and, he gets a rush of deja vu, Beethoven does, in his cool, members-only jacket and pink shades. And Steven goes, listen, I'm going to put you in a cab, and I'm going to send you across town to a recording session. There's going to be a guy waiting for you with a bunch of cool things that you can create with. So Beethoven drives across LA, and he arrives at the session, and he sees a synthesizer for the first time. Now, the pitch, the notes on the synthesizer would have been exactly as they were on the pianos when he was alive, back in 1801. So he steps up, he puts on a cool pair of shades, and the sun is setting, and he starts to, he's like, wow, that's incredible. He really is, he's liking this. And the engineer goes, well, there's a lot more I can show you. There's drum machines. There's a Roland 808 drum machine. I know you've never heard one of these things. I can teach you how to program a beat. And maybe we have some rhythm, like what would have been timpani and percussion in your day. And Beethoven is game, and he learns how to program a beat on his 808 drum machine. And it might have sounded like, that's pretty cool. Now, could also be that he ran out of gas on the way to 1985 and got let out in 1967 in London. and at EMI Studios, and he would have seen incredible things there that were unfathomable to him. And he would have met a guy named John and Paul who were there working on a song called Strawberry Fields Forever. And Beethoven would have seen a mellotron for the first time. Now, he would have understood like what a flute or a trumpet was, what what these sounds were, but what is the sorcery that gets like the flutes into the keyboard? And so Paul would have maybe given him a demonstration of what they were doing, and then and Beethoven would have thought that sounded great, and he would have waited for them to leave that night after they were done working, and he decides he's going to sneak back into the studio. He can't figure out how to turn the lights back on, so he lights up a candle, and he starts playing. You get the idea. So he gets through that, and he just thinks it's great. So I figured while we were at EMI, we would listen to an interview with George Martin, who produced the Beatles, just to sort of reaffirm that even the Beatles were asking themselves these questions. What else can we do to make these recordings more special? Is there anything else that we can do that we're not thinking about? And they were constantly asking George Martin this. Let's have a listen.
The strength of the Beatles was the fact that they had eternal curiosity. They had eternal quest for something new. Exhaustively so for me. I mean, they were always saying, what new sound can we have? What other instruments do you know? What can you do to make this better? Give me a different sound of the voice. And they were not content with what they had yesterday.
And next is one of my favorite music producers of all time. Her name is Wendy Carlos. She's probably most famous for having done Switched on Bach, but she also composed the score for Clockwork Orange by Stanley Kubrick. And Switched on Bach she was sort of taking old classical pieces and reimagining them through modular synthesizers in the 1960s and 70s. It was the most successful classical album of all time for a long time, but it was very controversial.
Carlos, in her studio in Greenwich Village, is one of the pioneers of synthesized sound. Her controversial versions of the classics, created entirely electronically, put machine-made music on the map.
Right now we're listening to the 8-track, and we're mixing, sort of playing the role of the conductor, putting together, in this case, a pair of tracks which has all of the string section that sounds like this. There's a harpsichord track, and 2 flutes. And there's this nice solo that's split up into 2 tracks. Let's put them all together. I think it needs a little more echo. Yeah, that's good.
In the studio, and she is reimagining this music, and it sounds great, even though people like classical music purists didn't seem to be ready for it. But here's Beethoven. He looks overwhelmed by all of this, poor fella. So I think it's too many options for him. Let's give Beethoven a hand and put him back in the DeLorean and get him back to 1801. He's been a trooper. I'm sorry, Beethoven. I was messing with your likeness, and forgive me. But so now we're going to go from 1801 Vienna, and we're going to travel to 1984 to Minnesota, a place called Paisley Park, to see how another musical master might have written an amazing song. And so Prince is, this is the home of Prince, and Prince is staying in, also feeling a little blue about a woman that he loves. And so this is a woman named Sandy Scipione. She was his assistant and housekeeper, and she pampered him and cooked for him and cleaned for him. She loved him, and he loved her, and he was very fond of her. And she had to leave her job very abruptly when her father had a sudden heart attack. And he was feeling really distraught about this, so he was also feeling inspired. And he summoned his engineer, a woman named Susan Rogers, another legend, into his home recording studio, and they they patch in a Yamaha DX7 synthesizer, and Prince just kind of starts tinkering around, same note. So he finds something that he likes. He's just tinkering, and he finds he goes, this is probably too party. Like, this is not what I'm going for right now. I'm feeling upset about Susan leaving, but he tells his engineer, record the tape really quick. I want to bank this idea. I know that's a huge synth hook, and that's going to make for a hit one day. I know it. So she does, and he might have even jotted down 2000. He wrote down some lyrics, banks these ideas away to come back to it. And so he turns around and comes back to his synth, and he plays this.
It's been 7 hours and 13 days since you took your love away. I go out every night and sleep all day.
Oh, hang on, before we go to Sinead. Okay, cool. So that comes out, a band on his label. Prince doesn't put that version out. Who knows why? It could have been too personal. And it wasn't a big success, that song. So it was successful enough that 4 years later, a music manager in Dublin, Ireland, was gathering material and ideas for his artist's follow-up record to her very successful debut record. And this was, of course, Sinead O'Connor. And he plays her this. He gives her a cassette of Nothing Compares to You, and Sinead listens to it, and she thinks it's great because she herself is going through a tough breakup right now with her music manager. But in this case, she thinks that he has her best interest at heart. She thinks it's an unbelievable song, and she brings it into the studio. And obviously, I'm sure we all know this one, but she sort of gave this song a new emotional identity and made different decisions in the arrangement and the instrumentation by doing this.
It's been 7 hours and 50 days since you took your love away. I go out every night and sleep all day since you took your love away.
Stop it here, but I don't want to go to the time machine yet. So she's working on this. She's in the middle of this recording session, and she also might have decided, that time machine that you got, I just want to see if there's something that exists in the future that could give this recording an edge or something. I'm just curious what awaits for, instrumentation and innovation in music. So she jumps in the time machine and she comes to Aspen in 2025. And she comes to the Wheeler Opera House and she meets all of us and she meets me. And now I have a whole recording studio on my laptop computer right here. I have every synthesizer that's ever been made. I have, libraries of drum samples and emulators that can, any orchestral, I can do it all right here. And she says, wow, that's really cool. Like, you want to try a take of Nothing Compares to You? You know it? I'm like, yes, I know the song. And she goes, I really liked those cellos or those strings that were at the top of the song that you seem to know. And I say, okay, I have something. How does that sound? She's like, that's great. Maybe set a little 808 drum beat to it, and let's try something.
It's been 7 hours and 50 days since you took your love away. your love.
Now she might be like, can you change a chord for fun? Like, then I say,
Since you've been gone, I can do whatever.
just say, what about turning it into like a nightclub, like disco, you know, club track? I say, okay, like,
I can eat my dinner in a fancy restaurant, but nothing, I said nothing can take away this blues, 'cause nothing compares to you.
so I would have been like, oh, thank you. She was like, wow, that was interesting. That was cool. And she's like, I think I'm going to go back to 1990 and, you know, stay in the direction that I was going. And I totally understand. So she goes back to 1990. And so now you get an idea of the choices that can happen during production and all of this stuff. I want to just visit real quick multi-track recording very, very quickly. And so this is an image of the very first recording session of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. This happened in Germany in 1910. Very famous recording. And this is what the cutting edge was in 1910. You would have had a brass horn like this that would have caught the sound vibrations that were happening in the room, and it would have translated the sound to a spinning wax disc being monitored by the engineer there. And all of these decisions that would have happened about getting the right balance and the right mix would have happened by, you know, putting the loud instruments in the back of the room and the quieter instruments in the front of the room. And all of these decisions had to happen before you started recording. It was the cutting edge at the time, but on an engineering level, it was very hard to figure all of that out. You're going to see eventually as we run through the decades that the horn there becomes microphones, microphones hit amplifiers, amplifiers then get recorded to disc and eventually to tape. So let's just listen to this really quick. So you can hear the fidelity that increases like over time. Clearly, Beethoven's back. Oh God. Okay. Still kind of disco. Started reimagining classical pieces from the past. Okay, now we're really going to leave Beethoven alone. One more round of applause for Beethoven. Okay. All right, so now I thought it could be interesting to talk about a few songs that I had something to do with. I selected a couple of songs from my band, The Voids. I think the first selection, depending on the song, we work on things differently. Like one process is not the same from song to song. So this first song that I'm going to go through is one that I had a lot to do with. The demo started at my home studio, and I presented it to the band, and eventually we sort of recorded it together and we ironed our way through it. The second song was a much more sort of collaborative process, and I'll explain that when we get there. But I'm going to play you a little bit of the first song just because it's going to make it easier to contextualize all these things that I'm talking about. This is a song called Flexorcist. Hopefully I can scroll through this because the intro is kind of long. No. Okay. Bear with me here. So, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so where to begin? I was at home listening to, well, Prince. And on any given day, I'm making music every day. Sometimes for 8 hours a day, sometimes for a couple hours a day. Still, after all of these years, I'm compelled to work on music all the time. And some days I'm writing a song. Some days like today, this particular day that I'm about to talk about, I just was creating a drum beat based on When Doves Cry by Prince. It was came across my Spotify, and I thought the drums sounded really cool. And again, I did some research into what drum machine Prince was using for this particular song, and it's called an LM1. This was very famous. You've definitely heard this one before as well. And I don't own one of these things, but as I was saying, I have these great libraries of these drum sounds and stuff. So I was working on creating something that felt like When Doves Cry. And I'm going to just play a little bit of When Doves Cry so you can hear kind of the flavor of the drums.
This is what it sounds like when the doves cry.
Okay, so my drums don't sound nearly as cool as that. His were like mixed and processed, and they sounded great. But I used the same samples pretty much, and I created this. So I put this together at home, and I thought it sounded really good, and I called it Cool Kite LM1 Beat. And I banked the idea. That's all I really needed. I'm sure that afternoon I was kind of putting chords, setting chords to it and stuff. And that didn't really lead anywhere. So I banked the idea. I put it away. Probably around that time, I was listening to my records. And one of my favorite Stevie Wonder albums is an album called Secret Life of Plants. And there's a deep cut on that record that is one of my favorite Stevie Wonder songs of all time. And it's called Power Flower. And I'm going to play you a bit of this as well. So just that intro, Stevie Wonder is one of my favorite artists of all time. I always wanted to learn that song. I think it's really helpful and productive for songwriters, composers, to learn your favorite artist songs. It helps develop your chord vocabulary and you understand their arrangements and stuff. So I've always found that really useful. So I just sat there with the song and I was just kind of tinkering around and it's really just two chords. It's pretty simple. They change when they get to the verse, and I was like, okay, I really like that. I've got to find something else to do with it. And so, kind of, and I just knew that was a section. Those changes. And I had other chords banked away in something else that I had been working on probably a few weeks before that. It's not the coolest sound ever. It's just a simple Rhodes piano, but I didn't really care at that point. I'm just kind of just trying to find the notes, really. And so, okay, that's an A section and that's a B section. What do they sound like colliding into each other? They work. It just serendipity that they work together. And then I thought, wow, I had that drum beat banked away. I wonder what it would sound like if I were to take those chords and start playing to those drums. So I was able to find it right away. I didn't have to slow down. I knew it was called Kite Cool LM1 Beat. And So I got that far, and so I thought that was something worth sending to the guys. And as soon as I sent it to Julian, my singer, I got like a thumbs up, and he started, putting together some melodies and stuff. And then eventually we bring it into a studio, into the live room with the band. The mics are up, the instruments are all there, and then we play it together. That's when it really becomes a recording. These drums are really good, but there's no way that I can make something nearly as interesting and cool as my drummer in the Void's Alex. So it's just kind of a roadmap. And things often begin this way when we all sort of have our own at-home demos. They're just sort of roadmaps to kind of, bring to the guys. So the next song, unless we wanted to hear a piece of Flexorcist, do we remember what it was? Okay. So all right. So I'll play you one more time what it was. So verse, chorus. This is the demo. So you got the idea, and then, after playing it with everybody,
Just one day, standing in perfect column still, graves lined up across the hill. This music don't let you do it, baby. Oh no.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. I love it. Nice. Okay, so this next song I picked because my friend Allison, who lives here in Aspen, who is the best, I think is this your favorite Void song? I don't even know. I know you like it. And we've watched this. We played this 2 songs on The Tonight Show probably like 6 months ago. And this one I know you liked, so this is why I chose it for you. And so maybe it's helpful to watch just a bit of the performance, just so we can sort of, again, be on the same page as we get into what the process behind it was. There, but so that's this is the cover of our last album. It's called Like All Before You. So the way that another way that some of our songs come together is we have a band Dropbox. Sounds totally unsexy maybe, but like it really relates to banking your ideas. So we'll have a band Dropbox. And this is not what it looks like or what the titles of all of our individual folders are, but like inside the main folder, I guess, are subfolders. And we all, like I said, we're all producers and songwriters, and we're constantly making music of our own. So Flexorcist, for example, like what I just played, I would have pulled in, and I would have just, any drum beats, ideas, anything that anybody is making that sounds cool, they would put into their individual folder. And then the next time that we all get together, we listen through everything, and we bring a whiteboard into the studio, and we start jotting down all of these demos. And so once we have this whiteboard, set, and we've listened through everything, We go into the live room where all the instruments are there, the microphones are up, and we start to just kind of stitch together songs that might make good companion sections. Like Jake might have a really good idea for a verse that goes with a really good idea that Beardo, one of our guitar players who was wearing the cape in that video, he might have a really good idea for a chorus. So it might involve kind of, dropping the key, slowing down the tempo, but we do this thing that I like to refer to as like Mr. Potato Heading songs together. So if you pull out the nose and the arms and the ears and everything, and you're just left with Mr. Potato Head's naked body, you start to then kind of be like, okay, this piece could go, is the ear here, and maybe that would fit well with this idea, and all of a sudden you have a song. Now, the demos, I want to just kind of play you a bit of what each demo was, and then come back to the Tonight Show performance so you can hear what it became. The intro to this song was something that happened during one of our recording sessions where we all went to different instruments. So like maybe Amir, the guitar player was on drums, and somebody else, we were all playing the instrument that was not our own, our instrument. And that's a very good way, by the way, of getting out of your way. You can be a little bit less, self-critical. And good ideas can happen that way. I've heard many bands say the same thing in songwriting. Sometimes they just all switch instruments. And so we have this jam that happened as a result of that. Now, the second one happened during a sound check when we were doing an American tour and we were in Detroit. Instead of playing a song that we were going to play that night for our front of house, we just started improvising a jam that became Banked Away and became a section for Square Wave as well. And then the last is a voice memo recording that Julian recorded at home, playing very beautifully and quiet on an acoustic guitar. And he sent that to me and Jake as well, to reinterpret what he was playing on guitar with synthesizers. So going to show you what each section became and what it was. So yeah, that is, well, everybody, that's all I prepared today. That's all I got. DJ, man, thank you for letting me do this. This was very cool. And what's next? I have no freaking clue. I guess AI is coming and generating millions of songs a day and everything. I think artists will continue to tinker and do what they do as long as we have music in our blood and support live